Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be a season 2 spoiler review of You, which just dropped on Netflix today. I didn't do a season 1 review on this channel, but for those of you who are wondering what I thought of season 1, I actually really enjoyed season 1. I mean, it was a ridiculous season. There was so many stupid moments, but I feel like that's what kind of gave it its appeal. So in terms of season 2, I was immediately skeptical because I feel like with things that are like so almost overdramatic, melodramatic, sensational kind of series, I feel like most of the time it's a one season pony. So I was immediately skeptical going into season 2. But when I saw that trailer drop, I was very intrigued and very excited. Like, they really sold it. Like, that is like probably one of the best trailers that I've seen this year for a TV show. Very persuasive, very gripping, and it looked like it was going to be a very interesting series. In terms of whether I think that the trailer oversold the season, I'll let you know later on in the video. But yeah, I guess season 1 wrapping up, final episode. Gwen gets killed and Joe basically gets away with it, but then Candace, his ex, comes back into town, and then it's a whole kind of thing of, oh, you know, Candace has come back to town. We thought that something happened to her. What is she going to do? What's going to happen to Joe? Is Joe finally going to get his upcomings? What's going to happen? Like, the first couple of episodes, it basically kind of shows what happened between Joe and Candace, and then kind of later on it's like they reveal everything. In terms of the way that they chopped it up, I feel like to a certain point it was just kind of like, okay, we know that Joe did her dirty, like, can you just hurry up and reveal what happened? Like, we already know at this point that Joe did her dirty. Joe probably tried to kill her and she somehow managed to escape, and now she's back for revenge. I feel like they kind of dragged that out a lot. But as we know, Joe basically very dramatically tried to stop her from running away, took her to the woods, and I don't know, again, you know, the writing is questionable. But in terms of taking her to the woods, I don't know what the objective was because obviously he's got this staple bookstore, and in the bookstore he's got the basement and the sophisticated glass prison. So I'm thinking, if he wasn't trying to kill her, why would he take her to the woods? Like, did he build something in the woods? I'm still quite confused by that. I feel like maybe that was just, I thought, well, he's a stalker, let's just take her to the woods. So obviously he takes her to the woods, and, you know, she tries to make a break for it. There's a scuffle, and he bashes her head, and he thinks that she's dead. So he buries her in a shallow grave, and very dramatically, not as classy as Kill Bill, she breaks out of the shallow grave, and she's now back for revenge. And honestly, if somebody did that to me, I would be on beef too. Like, you fully like tried to kill me and then buried me. Like, first of all, you tried to kill me, you didn't confirm that I was dead, and then you just buried me and left me for dead. We're definitely on beef after that. So I can definitely understand why Candace wants to come back. I'm not going to try and kill you. I'm going to do something much worse to you. And obviously, instantly, we kind of know that he's already found somebody else this season. So it's just the kind of thing where she's obviously going to swoop in one point and reveal to his new love interest what he did. That's the only thing I can think of. I'm thinking maybe it was going to get to the point where they were engaged or they were going to be married, and she was going to be dramatic and come into that. But even the threat of that, for me, wasn't that interesting. I feel like they should have just made Candace try and kill him. I feel like that should have been what her plot device or what her narrative story should have been. But let me know what you think. Do you feel like her coming for some sort of revenge where she's trying to ruin his love life was interesting enough, or do you feel like they should have gone down the extreme route of Candace trying to kill Joe? I feel like that would have spiced it up a bit more, really. So obviously Joe, they have this meeting and Joe basically gets shook and decides he's going to run away to LA and make this new identity, and he's going to try and live a straight and narrow life. And us knowing Joe, we know that's never going to happen. It opens with Joe, who's narrating, obviously, feeling quite sorry for himself. And basically, saying, he was the good guy and he loved so hard that it was dangerous for him. And, he can't love again because love is dangerous. And just feeling very sorry for himself and stroking his own ego and not really taking accountability for his actions. So he says that he's not going to love again, but just this lady that happens to work at the place where he just got a job is there, and he couldn't resist saying hello. And he pictures it kind of like, just a normal boy and girl situation. They meet at work and a romance begins. But obviously, as we learn, it's not as simple as that. Joe's actually just been out here stalking this girl before he even got the job. Knew what he studied the craft of getting the job, studied before getting the job to make sure that he got the job, studied the person that was interviewing him to make sure that he got an apartment that overlooks her apartment, which he has these high-tech binoculars to spy on her. So obviously it's not really a boy and girl situation. It's, Joe has found a new woman to obsess over situation. But even still, he's still trying to play it as well. He's still trying to look for, true love. He still believes in true love. And he just wants to take it slow with love. And that's the name of his love interest. So obviously his next love interest is Love. It's another kind of middle class, wholesome looking white woman. So as soon as we saw her on screen, I was like, yep, that's the one, that's the girl, But yeah, out of interest, did anyone kind of twig straight away that Joe was back to his stalker ways? Or did you kind of think that Joe had just happened to meet this woman totally by chance, totally by fate? Because it was kind of presented as, even though Joe was obviously interested in Love, that Love was more forward with Joe, and Love was more into Joe than Joe was into her. But was there anyone who kind of thought that this was all just, at first, before it was revealed, that this was all totally innocent, regardless of what you thought was going to become of the relationship? I had my suspicions. It was kind of just the benefit of the doubt thing, because obviously with the binoculars, I'm just like, why have you got binoculars? What is there to see in LA? It's so polluted, like you can't look at the stars or anything. So I was already kind of, when he had the binoculars and he was looking at people. I didn't think Joe was attempting to get on the straight and narrow. But let me know if Joe fooled you before, obviously, it was revealed. So obviously, there's that whole situation. And at this point, I thought that Love was going to be Joe's victim, that he was just going to end up killing her. Did anyone else think that Love was going to end up being Joe's victim? Let me know. I thought that it was all just going to end very horribly for them too. Basically, like last season, Joe and Love have their ups and downs. Joe wants to start off slow, but Joe wants to start off slow. He wants to be friends. Love wants to be more forward with him. They finally get together, then they break up. Love gets with her ex, and then there's also this thing where Love had a husband, but he died, and then she ends up back with Joe, and then there's the whole drama at the end, which I'll get into after. Within this whole relationship, they kind of branched out a bit, and I'm not really a fan of the branching out. Obviously, we had almost kind of mirroring last season. Obviously, last season, Joe basically mentored this guy who lived in this little boy who lived in his block and kind of looked out for him and his mother. And in the same kind of way, Joe took on kind of like almost like a big brother or father figure role for one of his neighbours' little sisters. He kind of took on that role of looking out for her. We learn more about Love's family, so her brother is heavily involved in this season. Her parents make an appearance. We kind of get a backstory on Love, a bit more than we did with Guinevere, which was interesting, I guess. But for me, I really didn't enjoy the other backstory. It was just like they were giving us this information. They were trying to make us like feel for Love and her brother and her family, and give us insight into their dysfunctional family. But I just felt like I didn't really care. And I think it's because the way that the show is set up. It was kind of set up to be this show where we're watching this clumsy serial killer get away with murder, and now we're meant to feel for this woman that we barely know and her dysfunctional family. I just wasn't emotionally invested, and I don't think they should have been as heavily involved in the script. But what do you think? Do you think it was a good thing that we kind of got to see people and other people's stories other than Joe? Or do you feel like they should have focused on strengthening Joe's narrative and including Candace's narrative of coming back for revenge, and kind of focused in more in that? Let me know. So everyone who's watched kind of knows, so everyone who's already watched it, or if you're kind of just watching this to get a gist of what the season is about before committing 10 hours of your time to it, obviously, like last season, ups and downs in the relationship, and then near the end, the drama starts to kick in and it starts to get a bit more intense. So obviously, Candace, she has a big part this season, and she basically sweeps in rather dramatically and manages to seduce Love's brother, ends up his kind of girl, and infiltrates her way into Love's circle quite quickly. Her and Joe face off numerous times. Like, she warns Joe, and she's basically like, yeah, I'm here to basically fuck shit up. And Love starts to become suspicious of her. She hires a private detective to look into her, and obviously she's obviously looking quite dodgy from the outside looking in. She's obsessed with Joe. She's trying to break into Joe's house. So Love basically sets up a trap for her and catches her breaking into Joe's house, and they both she confronts her and she reveals everything, and then she talks to Joe about it, and Joe basically admits that he is Joe, but basically spins it as Candace is crazy and she's obsessed with me. This is why I had to take extreme measures to move away from New York and have a new name. And to be honest, it sounds like a credible story. If I was Joe, that's probably the story that I would have spun. And it kind of looks like she buys it, but then she has this thing where she can't trust him. Like, she values honesty, she values brutal honesty. And that's when she kind of goes off on her rebound with her dead husband's ex. So after that, Candace kind of just disappears. We don't really see her. And I guess that was the most exciting point for me. Well, the second most exciting point with me with Candace, because when she was kind of teasing and stuff like that, it wasn't very exciting. It wasn't but when she was just turned up, obviously her initial kind of entrance as 40's girlfriend was kind of like, okay, Candace, like, okay, what's going on here? But then after a while, it's just like, can you drop the dime already? Like, it's just getting very long and tiresome. So I feel like obviously the dramatic reveal was good, but then other than that, and obviously the last scenes in the show wasn't really that exciting. There wasn't really this kind of pressure or intensity with her around. And then obviously they kind of tried to dabble within her trying to heal from her trauma, like when she went when they were at their parents' vow renewal retreat, and she didn't want to hug Joe because she was having flashbacks. It kind of touched on that, but it was still very... It kind of touched on that, and even with Joe was having flashbacks, and they tried to do like a backstory with Joe's story and why he's the way he is, or perhaps some justification as to why he is the way that he is. And, you know, he sees Guinevere's ghost. And I feel like things like seeing people's ghosts and flashbacks and stuff like that, especially when the flashbacks come with physical contact, I feel like a lot of that time it gets very repetitive and very gimmicky. It kind of feels like it is sprinkled in there with little nuance, and I'm kind of getting tired of the whole flashback thing. It's just so predictable. I feel like there needs to be a new device where trauma is conveyed rather than flashbacks. I feel like flashbacks are a bit of a cop-out most of the time. But yeah, let me know what you kind of thought on them trying to touch on trauma and background stories and stuff like that. I felt like it was a little bit forced. There's a few murders in this series. The first one being this celebrity that has an interest in underage girls. So there was an incident with Joe's neighbour Delilah, who's also kind of the housing manager for the apartment complex that he lives in. When she first came to LA as a 17-year-old, there was an incident with this celebrity, and basically he took advantage of her when she was underage, and now her little sister Ali is kind of in communication with him under the guise of him mentoring her, but she has basically warned her to stay away but hasn't really disclosed what has happened to her. So her little sister is kind of just being a bit standoffishy and kind of thinking that her sister is jealous or, you know, trying to ruin her opportunities. So obviously Joe has been looking out for her and has been hanging around with Love's brother, who was kind of like in that celebrity circle. So he's come across this guy a lot and has seen Ali with him. And obviously Joe being Joe, even though he's a serial killer, he also has a saviour complex. So he wants to save Ali, and there's a situation where he goes to confront Henderson and wants him to confess to his crimes. And there's a situation and there's a scuffle and he ends up killing him. Before the murder took place, Joe had been anonymously trying to help Delilah take him down, because Delilah is a journalist and she wanted to make kind of like an op-ed piece revealing him as this, you know, paedophile and predator. And he had been anonymously helping her with that. He broke into her house, found some dodgy pictures, but the police said that they couldn't really do anything about it. So he has been secretly basically helping her. Then there's a situation where him and Love break up, and during that breakup, she's on the rebound with her ex-husband's friend, and Joe rebounds with Delilah. And on the night that he killed Hanson, when he was getting rid of all of the stuff, all of the evidence, he had with him a pair of headphones that belonged to Hanson, and the cop, who just happens to be friends with benefits with Delilah, stops him for jaywalking, and Joe basically gives him the headphones, which are a very expensive brand, as basically hush money, and the officer lets him go, but he remembers him from that night. So basically, there's a situation where Joe and Delilah carelessly get it on in public and they get cited for indecent exposure. And Delilah calls on her friends with benefits to help her out. Obviously, I feel like he's a bit offended because he kind of wanted to start a proper relationship with her. And obviously now she's been caught having sex with another guy. So he's not really trying to help her out of spite. But obviously Joe, even though Joe and Love at this point are not together, he's still really good friends with her brother. And they belong to a really powerful family who basically own the whole police department. And she manages to get them off without anything. And then after that, the police officer starts to get suspicious and start looking into him, and basically tells Delilah she saw him on the night that Hanson died with these expensive headphones that he had no business owning because he only makes like £12 an hour, and that it's all looking very dodgy and that maybe she should be careful. And obviously her being the journalist that she is, she goes putting her nose in her business and goes to Joe's house and starts filling in for stuff. And at this point, I'm just thinking, okay, you're a journalist, you want to break stories. But for me, you know, I do journalism. I don't do like op-ed journalism. I just do film journalism. Sometimes I dabble in politics. But let me tell you, my life is more valuable than any story or fame that I could get from exposing something that could threaten my life. And then, you know, she searches the apartment. Okay. But then, obviously, in the apartment, she finds a storage key where he basically somehow moved his glass prison/dungeon to a storage box, and she finds it. And then, obviously, she goes in there and she finds some dodgy things. She finds some knickers in there. She finds Henderson's laptop, and it's all looking very suspicious down there. And then Joe catches her in the act in the storage room with all the kind of incriminating evidence, and obviously he locks her in the box. And at this point, if you were a serial killer at this point, or whether you were a killer and you're trying to get away with a murder, do you think Joe did the right thing by locking her in the box? Because I think he should have at least spoken to her, tried to reason with her. You know, locking her in the box is a classic Joe thing to do, but I feel like surely by now he might have learned. Obviously, he stole someone's identity and locked them in that box. The prison box has been used in this season. Obviously, at first, they don't really reveal who the guy is. And at first, I thought that this guy was Love's ex-husband. At that point, I had said that the husband was dead, but they didn't say, we didn't know what he looked like, and we didn't know when he died or how he died. So I actually thought that this guy in the box at first was Love's dead husband, and Joe had somehow found him, made him disappear, and now was trying to progress with Love. But obviously we find out that the guy in the box was somebody who was meant to help Will change his identity. And obviously Joe, being Joe, thought that it would be more foolproof for him to kidnap the guy who was changing his identity and steal his identity instead. And then obviously there's this whole situation with him holding him. And honestly, I feel like the whole thing, even with this guy coming to collect money, chopping off his fingers, I feel like that was all filler. I did not find that entertaining. I feel like it was long, but obviously they needed that to kind of be like, well, he let someone go and they basically just let it go and nothing bad happened to him. He just let the person go instead of killing him. But again, I feel like the whole kind of narrative that they made around him was unnecessary and not very entertaining, and again was just filler and made the series longer than it needed to be. So yeah, that's that guy. And then they kind of used him at the end to kind of form some sort of argument, which I'll get into. So obviously Joe catches her in the act. And like I said, I don't think I feel like if I was in that situation, if I was in that situation and someone had caught me out, I think in that situation, because specifically he had killed Henderson, who was effectively her abuser, I think maybe instead of just locking her into a box, he could have tried to speak to her. But I feel like him having the panties just wasn't a good look. Like, how do you explain that? You can't really reason, you know, how do you explain that? Like, she kind of thought that he was weird anyway. She was very standoffish when she first met him. She said she had a gut feeling that he wasn't a good guy. And then she finds out that he probably murdered this guy, and then he has women's panties, and there's this big old glass prison. Then again, maybe his only choice was to kind of lock her in the glass prison. But then his thing of, you know, he was gonna let her go at a certain point and then run away. The thought process, I feel like at that point it was very clear she was gonna go to the police. So in the mind of a serial killer, even though he kind of tried to see himself as an accidental serial killer, but I just feel like surely he should have just killed her, like, you know, or just let her go and handed himself in. All of this going on the run, doesn't it get tiring? If I was in Joe's shoes and I wanted to continue living my life, I probably would have just killed her, to be honest. And I wanted to continue living my blissful, uncaught serial killer life. You know, what's another body to the pile? I feel like the smart decision to do if you wanted to keep getting away with murder is to just add another body to the pile. But what would you have done if you were in Joe's shoes and you wanted to continue being free, a relatively free serial killer? Let me know what you would have done. So obviously, there's that whole situation. He's got these really high-tech handcuffs that come undone after a certain time. I'm just thinking, where has Joe got the money for all of this high-tech dungeon gear? He puts a timer on the handcuffs, which is going to release her. He's unlocked the doors and basically says she can go free after 16 hours. And then there's a countdown. And within this countdown, he's going to say his goodbyes. But then Love's brother, who he's close with, is working on a script with him, fakes a kidnapping and then locks him in a hotel room so that they can get their script done. And honestly, it's just crazy. I wonder if rich people actually just do this. Like, they're just fake kidnappings for fun, just to manipulate people into doing whatever they want. I wonder if rich people actually do this. So yeah, that happens. It's a mad night. He gets drugged and Delilah ends up dead. But he doesn't know if he has killed Delilah. And so the next kind of final-ish episode, last two episodes, is basically him trying to figure out if he actually killed Delilah in a kind of drug-filled rage. And instantly, I didn't think that he killed her. I feel like when Joe kills someone, he knows that he's killed someone. So I didn't think that he killed her. At first, I thought that it was Candace who had killed her, and that maybe the neighbour was just collateral and she was just doing it to pin it on him. But obviously, after he found the body, Candace was just taking so long to appear that just started to get less and less more realistic. So then I was just kind of like, well, who did it then? And then I was kind of thinking, maybe she killed herself by accident. Like, maybe she tried to break free and there was a freak accident and she ended up killing herself by accident. Killing herself. That's what I thought, but let me know who your first suspects were. And is there anyone who kind of thought that, yes, it was Joe straight away? Or did you have your doubts, or did you think that it wasn't Joe this time? Where I felt like it started picking up was from episode 6 onwards. After the whole Delilah situation, Delilah in the cage, it started picking up. And then obviously with the whole who killed Delilah, was it Joe kind of thing, that's when it started to get quite interesting for me and quite engaging. Obviously when Candace caught Joe moving the body and she locked him in the glass prison, I thought that it was over for Joe. I thought, like, next season, if there is a next season, we're going to see Joe in prison, or we're going to see Joe going through the court system or something like that. That's what I thought was going to happen with Joe. And so obviously Candace comes and, you know, she's here for her revenge, so she calls Love. And she calls Love to come. And you know, obviously Candace is on beef, and I absolutely understand why she's on beef, and it's the ultimate petty thing to do, but I just don't know why. And obviously, I guess maybe for dramatic purposes, obviously, like I said, it's not the best written show, But I just feel like if I was Candace, yeah, I probably would have called her to be petty, but I also would have called the police as well, as backup as well. Because like I said, like, you know, I would have came with backup as well, and I would have waited outside where everyone can see me until backup came, and so then until backup came, because all she needed to see was, you know, all Love really needed to see to know that her man was a monster was to see him covered in blood and then the body come out after him. I feel like that would have been more than enough. But, you know, I guess Candace has been waiting for her revenge. You know, she's tried to go to the police. They had another section with that, with the police. She went to the police and the police basically said that there was nothing that she could do. She couldn't prove the things that Joe had done for her. And the most that she could get was most likely a temporary restraining order, which doesn't really help you when someone's trying to kill you, because it's like someone's trying to kill you and trying to kill you. So a restraining order doesn't really do anything. It's not like, you know, because with restraining orders, it's not like once they pass that line, the police is just automatically going to be on their way. And if you were to call the police and be like, well, this person's, you know, stepped over the boundaries of my restraining order, I doubt the police is going to come ASAP. You'll probably be killed by the time they come. So I guess it's kind of highlighting stuff like that. Obviously, I studied like psychology and stuff like domestic violence within that. And, you know, most people don't go to the police for things like domestic violence and stuff like that, even though it's basically attempted murder. And then obviously the rate of people who report it, who attempt to try to report it, are even lower, and then the success rate of reporting to conviction is quite low. So I feel like in terms of them trying to be socially conscious, I feel like this is one of the things that they did right. So obviously now she's taken it into her own hands. She's being very petty and she's called Love. Love comes in, she sees Joe, and she seems very upset and distraught. And, you know, the first thing she does is ask, you know, Candace to release him. And I thought that was quite suspicious. But I didn't suspect her of anything malicious. But I thought that was quite suspicious, because I just feel like if I walked in and I saw my man with this dead body in this box, and she, you know, this woman who has been warning me and I've been ignoring her warnings has now presented me with this, the first thing I'm probably going to do is call the police. That was the first thing I would have done. She's saying release him, say that she's lying, and it's just like, you've known this guy, what, 3-6 months, but you're there putting your faith and your trust in him. You know, she asked, you know, and, you know, Candace basically tells him to confess, and, you know, Joe is on his modest globe, you know, and Joe at this point, he's ready to repent for all of his sins and all of his wrongdoings, and he admits that he lied, and he admits that, you know, Candace was telling the truth this whole time, and how he's this horrible person, and how he is so sorry. And yeah, he basically at this point, he is ready to accept whatever punishment is before him, because he believes, you know, this is what he deserves. Almost him seeing the light, I guess. Basically, Love runs out after that, and, you know, she runs out and she's sick, and Candace just goes chasing after her. And I don't know if I was Candace, if I would do the same thing, because at this point she still hasn't called the police, and Candace basically says, are you calling the police? And Love doesn't say anything, and it doesn't look like she's calling the police. So again, at this point, if I hadn't called the police, I definitely would have called the police right now, and I probably would have left Love be to this point. I feel like, I'm not sure if Candace was trying to be passionate there, or whether she was just trying to rub it in, as to say, you know, I'm sorry for this, but I told you so. like kind of thing. You know, when people try and be sympathetic but still are trying to squeeze in that I told you so. I feel like that's the vibe that Candace was on. But what would you have done if you were Candace? Would you have called the police at that point? Or would you have gone after Love? Or would you have given her some space? Let me know what you would have done in that situation. But obviously, the writers, they decided that Candace is going to go up to Love and try and comfort her. And then Love kills Candace. And I was just like, it was kind of out of nowhere, but then it was like, of course, Love, this innocent looking woman, would kill Candace. And then after she killed Candace, it was all very clear that she was the one who killed Delilah. And I knew it instantly. I definitely knew it. I knew it instantly. But after that, were you kind of sure that it was her that killed Delilah? Or were you kind of still thinking it was Joe and maybe, you know, she was just trying to protect Joe by killing Candace? What were you thinking at that point? Did you feel like it was definitely her who killed Delilah at that point? Or did you still have your reservations? Let me know. So obviously, Love comes back. She basically tells Joe that she still wants to be with him. And Joe's saying, you know, I killed all of these people. I killed Delilah. And then she reveals that she killed Delilah. And you know what? I'll give it to the writers of You. That was a pretty good reveal. I'll give you that. You know, she says, and then she reveals that she, you know, this isn't her first rodeo. Basically, there was that situation of the whole dysfunctional family and how her brother was basically abused by his nanny, and the nanny ended up committing suicide. And then on suicide, then the brother reveals on like a kind of a night where they get high on LSD to Joe, while they're writing the script, the brother reveals that it wasn't actually a suicide and that he had killed her and that the parents had covered it up. But he had said that he blacked out and did it. Like, he didn't remember actually doing it, but he knows that he did it. Then she reveals that it was actually her who did it and let the brother take the blame. So obviously they're both serial killers at this point, and it's starting to become like a serial killer, you know, serial killers in love type of thing. But Joe isn't here for like a serial killer romance, and he basically, you know, thought that Love was this wholesome person, and he basically says that he's not really here for, you know, her as this corrupt, broken serial killer like he is. So then obviously she kind of senses that, and she locks him in the prison box, so he gets basically a taste of his own medicine. Candace, she meddles. Obviously when she was dating 40, who was like a aspiring filmmaker, like he had one good hit and then obviously he turned to drugs and everything, and now he's back, but now he's back on the film scene. She basically gives him Guinevere's book and says that they should do a film about the book, a film adaptation of the book. And the book is obviously the book that she kind of wrote, but Joe kind of wrote, that basically pins the therapist was obsessed with her and he was the one who killed her. But when Joe and 40 were on lockdown for the script, as he was dissecting the script, he realizes that it wasn't the therapist and it was probably her jealous ex-lover. Back and forth, obviously Candace basically disappears, but she does make, you know, fleeting appearances, rather, whether they're just talking about her or she's on text form. But she comes back once more, you know, once more, like right at the end, to basically warn 40 again, and basically says, you know, you've got to be careful. He's probably going to kill your sister. When he would defend him, she'd be like, well, don't come back to me when he kills your sister. And that starts playing on his mind, and he starts doing more research into the therapist. He ends up going to see him and shows him a picture of Joe, and the therapist basically warns him and tells him that he's dangerous. And then carrying inside in that, obviously Love has locked Joe in the box and he's trying to figure out how he's going to make his escape. And he's basically saying he's going to fake it till he makes it, and basically make Love believe that he still loves her, and then plot his escape. So he manages to convince her to let her out the box, eerily close to how Guinevere did. And as he was going to attack her, I guess she saw the reflection of the weapon that he was going to attack her with. And then he puts his arms around her throat, but she says that she's pregnant. And then he stops everything. He's always like wanted to be, a father. One of those things when like messed up people want to do the right thing by their child kind of thing. That whole thing's going on. And they get back together and they decide to go to a wedding together. But obviously, 40's not here for it. He's now fully convinced that Joe is like this bad serial killer and that Candace was telling the truth. Delilah's been missing for a hot minute now, and Joe basically is asking Lover what are they going to do about the Delilah situation. How is that going to go away? Because obviously she's a missing person now. How they're going to deal with Delilah's death and Hanson's death, because the police are looking into both of them. And then Love's plan is to set up Ali, Delilah's little sister, to be a suspect in the Hanson murder, and then lawyer her up to beat the case, and then make it such a big case to the public that she gets a name for herself and then can make a career off of that. Delilah obviously did a Me Too piece, and she's been getting a lot of hate from the guy's fans. So they were going to cover that up as a suicide. I didn't really trust her with that. So obviously, once he finally gets out of the box, he gives Ali some money and tells her to like go away and start a new life, because the police are basically telling her because she's 15 and without a minor, and I guess she doesn't have a relationship with her mother, they were going to put her into foster care. And everybody knows no one wants to be in foster care, especially in America of all places. She takes the money and she runs, and she like asks him outright, like, is she dead? And he doesn't say that she is, but he basically alludes to the fact that she is, and basically says that the Quinn family who Love belongs to is a powerful family, and if she doesn't run, then they're going to make life difficult for her. So she takes the money and goes. But before she goes, she tells Joe to go to hell. Obviously, at the end, quite dramatic, the brother comes after Joe and holds him at gunpoint and basically tells him to stay away from his sister. And then, the sister's upset. She's saying she's pregnant, don't hurt him. And then she's telling the sister, like, why would you bring a child into this world knowing how you are? Like, I've known about you for ages, basically alluding to the fact that he knows that his sister is like an evil killer, or that he knows that his sister has problems, or he knows that his sister is a killer. So my thing is, your sister's a killer, so now, but you're trying to protect her from Joe, who's a killer, and it's just kind of like, well, because at that point, I wasn't really sure why he was going so hard for Joe, because he's basically said that he knows that his sister is a killer. So it's a thing where you know that your sister, I feel like at that point he knew that Joe knew that she was a killer, and he knew that she knew that Joe was a killer, and that they wanted to be, a serial killer couple. So I don't understand why he was going so hard for Joe when, even though his sister might not have as many bodies, they're both as bad as each other. But I guess, twin sister and all that, shared a womb, you've got to go hard for your siblings. But yeah, I just didn't get it, to be honest. Did you kind of see his reasoning, or do you feel like him going so hard for Joe and wanting Joe to die so badly didn't make any sense, considering that his sister was basically on the same level as Joe? Let me know what you think. And then obviously dramatically a gunshot goes off, and instantly I knew it wasn't him, and I knew it wasn't Love I knew Joe wasn't dead, I knew Love wasn't dead, and I knew that there was a cop outside, so I already knew that it was him who shot him. So that wasn't really that much of a surprise, to be honest. I feel like that was a bit of an anticlimax. So obviously after that, the powerful Quinn family who own the LAPD make the case go away. And I don't doubt that happens, I don't doubt that happens, rich people paying off the police. Rich people paying off the police is very rare when people of high profile who have used money to advance themselves in life actually get anything, actually get caught and prosecuted. And then he has his white picket fence, he has love, he has the baby, she's got her baby bump, and it's all very cute. And then of course it ends up with him looking through his fence at one of his neighbours, and he's basically alluding to the fact that the next season, if there is a next season, he's going to be trying to get with this neighbour. And it's just shameless behaviour. Shameless. You've got your serial killer bae. She knows about all of your dirty laundry. You're having a baby together. You've got your perfect family. You've got your white picket fence. And there you are looking at other women while your girl's pregnant with your baby. Men are trash. Just a little kind of roundup. What I thought of this season. I feel like this season was not as good as the first season. And it was dramatically less entertaining than the last season. If you are watching this and you just kind of wanted to get a rundown of the season before committing 10 hours to it, I'd say watch episode 1, watch episode 2, read up what happens on episode 3, 4, 5 on Wikipedia, and then continue 6 to the end. It is very long and drawn out, and I feel like with a lot of Netflix series, most of them could be concised down. Like this could have been a 5-episode series and still would have been great if they just cut out all of the filler and all of the extra noise that was not necessary. Another thing that I didn't like is that they kept doing this kind of shot where it was like a shallow depth of field where it was like kind of blurry. Like you could see like the outside was blurry and the center was in focus. I didn't like that. I'm not sure what they were trying to convey there, but I didn't like that shot particularly. I didn't like that choice of shot. Another thing is obviously with the social kind of commentary. Again, they kept bringing up, this is how I'm using my white male privilege. Or with Zer and Ali, bring up, no one will take me seriously as a victim because I'm not white. And I feel like a lot of these shows are trying to be socially conscious, attempting to be socially conscious, attempting to be woke. And it's just like with a show like You, where it's about, a cis white serial killer who gets away with murder every season, the two don't really match. It just kind of feels like sprinkler. It feels like it's a cake and they just put some sprinkler on it. It doesn't feel like they actually care about the issues that they're talking about, because overall the show is just trash anyway. Because overall, in terms of subject matter, the subject matter is trash anyway. But one thing I think that they did right in terms of being socially conscious was, I guess, the grooming process that paedophiles go to recruit people, and how at first they try and make it seem like they're not this perv and that they're really sensible. Like how basically Joe illustrated it when the guy was like, oh, you shouldn't come in because there's no one here and I shouldn't be here with you. Because I'm this age and you're underage and we shouldn't be in the house together. And, you should go home because it's inappropriate. And, obviously the girl's like, oh, no, I should stay. And obviously she says it a couple times. Then he's like, well, okay, but we really don't tell anyone, otherwise I'm going to get in trouble. And kind of saying it as if like, you're going to get me in trouble. Not I'm going to get myself in trouble because I know this is inappropriate behaviour that I should engage in, but you are going to get me in trouble if you say anything, because it was you who convinced me to let you in to this inappropriate situation. And that is how groomers groom underage girls. And that's how they do it. So in terms of putting progressive stuff in there and things that could actually help viewers, I feel like that is something that they definitely got right. And I feel like that is a lot of what predatory grown-ass people do a lot of the time, to try and victim blame children, and impressible teenagers. That's the argument that they use a lot of the time, when they try to place the blame on the victim. Oh, well, you know, I told her it was inappropriate, but she kept pushing. Like, you were a grown-ass person. A grown-ass person that knows better than that. So, yeah. So, if there is any young person watching this, definitely look out for those signs. So, yeah, I feel like that was a very accurate portrayal, and that is the tricks and the languages that these predatory people use. And then also, what they kind of, a running theme, you know, throughout this was kind of morality, punishment, justice, and forgiveness. And I feel like by the end, especially that moment where he apologized and he admitted all of the horrible things that he had done, basically, you know, admitted his sins. There was this thing of, you know, it was almost like a question put in there by the writers. Should we forgive Joe now? Like, has Joe done enough to be forgiven? Should we forgive him? And obviously with this Will guy whose identity that he stole, and he locked him in this cage for a number of days or a number of weeks, this guy forgave him. He you know, he let him go. He didn't go to the police. He carried on, lived his life, and even was sending him postcards like they were good friends, like he wasn't his prisoner. And it was a kind of thing, well, he's forgiven Joe, or perhaps he's seen the good in Joe. And maybe, is that what we're saying? That we should see the good in these serial killers? We should see the good in these murderers? Because at the end of the day, you know, in terms of crime and punishment, you know, a good chunk of these murderers are probably going to have to come out. You know, a good chunk of these murderers, after they've served their time or they've met their parole, they're going to have to come back into society. And, you know, so should we forgive them with that? They're going to have to come back in society. So as people in society, should we forgive these people? Should we forgive people like Joe? And I think if I was Candace who survived Joe, when he apologized to her, I'm not sure if that would give me peace of mind. I'm not sure if that would give me peace of mind, because you fully tried to kill me. I fully tried to leave you. You kidnapped me. You took me to the woods. You left me for dead. You took me to the woods. You tried to kill me, and then you buried me in a shallow grave in the middle of the woods where no one could find me. I personally wouldn't be able to forgive that. Even after, I feel like that would be, for me personally, difficult to forgive. I was personally victimized by Joe in the way that he victimized Candace. And then on top of that, he's tried to make me look crazy to everyone when I'm telling everyone the truth. And now suddenly, now that I've locked you in this box with your dead body, with your alleged dead body, now you want to say sorry. And this is what it took for me to get that sorry. So if you were Candace, would you have forgiven Joe? Let me know what you think. I think personally I wouldn't have forgiven Joe. But then as a character, like a viewer, I don't hate Joe. I don't have any dislike to him. And I'm not really sure if I even classify him as a villain. I kind of classify him as a stupid stalker / serial killer. But in real life, but if you think about it, if he was a real life guy, but I feel like it's because the show is very dramatic. It's not a very realistic, even though the tropes are realistic of, you know, the stalker, even though the stalker tropes are realistic, it's not a realistically written show. And it's not a realistically written show, and it's not a realistic portrayal of, it's not a realistic portrayal of how stalking actually affects people in real life. So yeah, let me know what you kind of think about Joe, and do you think Joe deserves forgiveness? For me, I don't think Joe's done enough for forgiveness. I feel like he has done some good things. He's not overall evil, but like, he's very selfish. But yeah, I feel like even the good that he does is self-serving. So I don't think he's at the point of forgiveness yet. But yes, obviously season 3, he's now going to be going after his neighbour, and honestly, I'm not remotely interested in season 3. I feel like if I do watch it, it'll be purely for review purposes. I feel like it's very clear that it is getting very repetitive. He sees a nice girl. He sees a nice, wholesome looking, innocent girl. He stalks her, and then he gets with her. And then he breaks up with her, and then he goes on the rebound with someone, and then somebody ends up killed, and then another person ends up killed. And then somebody ends up killed, and then another person ends up killed. Like, again. And then what really needs to go is the stalker outfit, the stalker cap. Like, I feel like obviously someone recognised him this season, but this stalker cap is just hilarious. Like, he's going out with a cap where you can still see your whole face as a disguise. It's just stupid. Repetitive. He stalked somebody in the woods again. He stalked someone in the woods last season. He did that again. What else did he do? The glass box came back from last season, even though I'm not sure how they shipped that glass box from New York to LA, and how he had the money to ship that box from New York to LA and then get someone to actually fit it into the storage room. Who knows? And then he gets away. He gets away with whatever he gets away with. I feel like the only way I would watch, the only way that I would be hyped for a season 3 would be, because obviously Love, she's a killer now. Serial killer as that. She's got 3 bodies on. She's got at least 3 bodies. Unless it was a thing where Love clocks that Joe's trying to get with this neighbor, and Love is just spending the whole season trying to kill this neighbor, and Joe is spending the whole season trying to stop Love from killing the neighbor. I feel like that's the only way that it would be interesting. Another one of these, if it's just exactly how it has been for season 1, season 2, I just don't think it will be interesting. But for me personally, if the show got cancelled right now, I would not be mad about it. If you haven't watched the show and you're just like watching this to kind of see if it's worth going through the 10-hour binge, I would say watch it, but I wouldn't put it on your high priority list. Freeze frame, totally forgot to record my rating, but just gonna insert it here. My overall rating for the series would have to be a 2.5. It definitely did not live up to season 1, and it was just a bit too repetitive for me to warrant it a 3 out of 5. I feel like it was longer than it needed to be, and wasn't really as satisfying as season 1. So therefore, I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5. I felt like it was a pretty average season. It had potential to be so much more, but it just was not. But yeah, let me know what you thought of this season, and let me know what you thought of my review. Till next time, guys. Bye.